Alright guys, welcome to the Pre-algebra 4.3 video. It's all about equivalent fractions. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, we've done that for a long time, and indeed you have. Okay, but it's good to review first of all, and then you're going to see why that matters and why we're kind of going to do some new stuff here. So if I said write a couple fractions that are equivalent to 8/12, what would you say? Well, I could say, well, first of all, if I divided 8 by 2, I must divide 12 by 2. Okay, so that would be like saying 4 over 6. 4 over 6 is equivalent to 8 over 12. Very true. Also, if I divided by 4 and divided by 4 this way, well, 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And so that would also be an equivalent fraction. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory, right? We've done this for a long time. Now, the reason we're kind of going here, though, is because of this. We want to simplify some variable expressions, okay, such as 10x over, how about 25x? Okay, 10x over 25x. So, if I want to simplify that, what can I do? Well, let's see. I know that 10 over 25, I could divide both those by 5. They could give me 2 and then on top and 5 on the bottom. It's easy enough. But what about the variables? Well, how we do this is we actually factor the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so we're factoring what? Well, this is a monomial. And that is also a monomial. So we're factoring monomials to simplify this fraction here that includes some variables. So again, how do I simplify, or how do I factor monomials? This is a little bit of a review of the other video. Factoring monomials. And in this case, they have, with variables, they have variables. Well, let's take 10x, for example. Remember, I'm going to do the factor tree for 10, right? So the factor tree becomes 2 times 5, both are prime, so I'm done with that part. And then I write the x as repeated multiplication, which there's just one of them, so I just write x, right? So my fraction, I'm now going to change the numerator, which once was 10x, now it's going to become 2 times 5 times x, okay? 2 times 5 times x. We all agree 2 times 5 is 10, times x would be x, right? So 10x and 2 times 5 times x are all the same thing. So we're going to do the same thing for 25x. I'm going to do the tree for 25. So that's going to become 5 times 5, right? And that's prime, circle them both, I'm done, right? X is repeated multiplication. There's only one of them, so it just becomes x. So I'm going to change my denominator from 25x to become 5 times x. Now, there's a reason I didn't write 5 times 5 as 5 squared. And why is that? Well, if I had written this as, I'll do this in blue, 5 squared instead of 5, I would look at the top and say, okay, what if I'm simplifying, I'm going to cancel. So what do they share? Well, he has a 5 up here, but if I had written this 5 times 5 as 5 squared, well, 5 and 5 squared are not the same, so I couldn't cancel anything. So that's why I don't write that as 5 squared. I keep it as 5 times 5. Anyway, so let's go back here. Remember, I'm simplifying, so I want to cancel. Okay, I want to cut things out of there. So do they both share a 2? No, they do not. But they both share a 5, right? There's one on top and one on bottom. Cancel them. Or you could say they become 1s. Either way is fine. They share anything else? Yeah, they both share an x and an x. So what am I left with? Well, on top I have a 2. Okay. And on bottom, canceled, 5, canceled, I have a 5. So if I simplify that fraction, what do I get? Well, 2/5. Right? That is the simplified version of 10x over 25x. And I forgot to state that up here was item number 1, item number 2. Now we're moving on to item number 3, and item number 3 is one that I want you to try. I want you to simplify the fraction 14a squared bc over 30b squared c squared. Take a minute and try that. Think about what I just did in the previous problem and see if you can emulate that. All right, so let's see what you got. Remember, I have monomials here, right? These are numbers and variables multiplied together. Numbers and a number and variables multiplied together, and a number and variables multiplied together. So how do I do that? How do I simplify a fraction that has monomials? Well, I'm going to factor the top, factor the bottom. How do I factor monomials, though? That's the question. Let's work on 14a squared bc first. Remember, to factor that, I'm going to factor I'm going to do a factor tree of the 14 first. Okay? So the 14 is going to become 2 times 7. Both are prime. Done with that. Now I'm going to write the variables as repeated multiplication. So what does that mean? Well, a squared is like saying a times a, and you have a b and a c, which is like saying times b times c, because anytime you have two letters right next to each other like that, it means multiplication. So if I'm going to rewrite the numerator of my fraction, it's going to become 2 times 7 times a times b times c over what? Well, let's do a factor tree for the 30. Well, let's see. 2 times 15. 2's prime. 15, I could do 3 times 5. Those are both prime, so I'm done there. Now I need to write that as repeated multiplication. Well, b squared is like saying b times b. C squared is like saying times c times c. So if I rewrite the denominator, what I get is 2 times 3 times 5 times b times c times c. And now remember, I'm simplifying. I'm making things smaller, cutting it, right? Chopping things out. So let's simplify this by doing what? Cancel out what they have in common. Do they both have a 2? Yes, cancel those. You could say they become 1s if you want. Either way. Both have 7s? No. Both have 3s? No. Both have 5s? No. How about A's? Well, he has 2, but he has none. Can't cancel any there. This guy has a B, and there's a B on bottom, so cancel 1 on top, cancel 1 on bottom. Can't cancel any more B's. They don't share any more B's, but how about C's? So they both have 1 C to give. So what am I left with? Well, I have this 7 times A on top. Right? 7 times A over 3 times 5 times B times C. 3 times 5 times B times C. Simplifying that up even further, I can write that as 7a squared over 3 times 5 is 15 bc. And you are done with simplifying that variable expression. Alright, well guys, that's all I have for you. Shorter video. Look forward to seeing you in class.